The story is told of a wealthy father who took his son on a trip to the country to show his son how poor people live and to teach him a lesson on contentment. They spent a couple of days and nights on the farm of what would be considered a very poor family. On their return from the trip, the father asked his son, "How was the trip?" The boy replied, "It was great, Dad." The father asked, "Did you see how poor people can be?" "Oh yeah," said the son. "So what did you learn from the trip?" asked the father. The son answered, "I saw that we have one dog and they have four. We have a pool that reaches to the middle of our garden. They have a creek that has no end. We have imported lanterns in our garden, and they have stars at night. Our patio reaches to the front yard, and they have the whole horizon. We have a small piece of land to live on, and they have fields that go beyond sight. We buy our food, they grow theirs. We have walls around our property to protect us, but they have their friends to protect them." With this, the boy's father was speechless. Then his son added, "Thanks, Dad, for showing me how poor we are." You see, contentment is a state of happiness and satisfaction. Paul, chained to a Roman soldier, spoke of his contentment that was not based on circumstances. Philippians 4:10 says, "I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it." I'm not saying this because I'm in need, Paul says, for I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. You see, changing situations did not change Paul's inner contentment. Robert P. Leitner, in his commentary on Philippians, note that the word content means self-sufficient. The Stoics used the word to mean human self-reliance and fortitude. They meant it to be a calm acceptance of life's pressures, but Paul used it to refer to a divinely bestowed sufficiency, whatever the circumstances. Now let's read on, verse 12. He says, "I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want." Then Paul, you get this, shares his secret. He says, "I can do all this through him who gives me the strength." Paul learned to be content through God's enabling power. The great apostle could handle the extremes, living in abundance and living in poverty, through strength provided by Jesus Christ. You see, great people are contented people. Their contentment does not come from circumstances. Their contentment comes from something deep within. Are you content, or do you live in a constant state of discontent? A story is told of a king who was suffering from a sickness, and he was advised by his astrologist of all people that he would be cured if he found the shirt of a contented man, and it was brought to him and he put it on. People went out to all parts of the kingdom after such a person, and after a long search they found a man who was really happy. But guess what? He didn't possess a shirt. You know, since John Bettar and Anne Schwal said "I do" back on November 25th, 1932, they've weathered many storms. ABC News interviewed them November the 20th, 2012, and discovered they had lived through the Great Depression, World War II, the terrorist attacks of 9/11, and 2 powerful hurricanes. As of November 2012, John was 101 and Anne was 97, and they were still living in their home. And by the way, they had 5 children, 14 grandchildren, and 16 great-grandchildren. When she was still a teenager, Anne's father had arranged for her to wed a certain man in Bridgeport, Connecticut. But her heart already belonged to another, John Bettar. So she and John eloped in Harrison, New York, because, as Anne said, we didn't have any money to go any further. And people told them it would never last. that was more than 80 years ago. In ABC News, in the interview, they noted they were still living happily together. They each offered some simple guidelines for building a lasting marriage. John said, get along, compromise, live within your means and be content, and let your wife be the boss. But Ann countered, we don't have any bosses. Both John and Ann, they're members of an Orthodox church in Bridgeport, Connecticut. They've acknowledged God as their source of blessings and contentment. Ann said, how can you not feel right with God in you and the blessings with you? And John re-emphasized the importance of living with contentment. He said, we just live with contentment and we don't live beyond our means. Paul said it like this, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or what. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. May we learn the secret of being content through him who gives us the strength.